and welcome to the LoudMouth MMA Recap Show. My name is Davidson Baker. I'm part of this network / family / whatever you want to call it. On this episode of the Recap Show, as I am filling in for the venerable Mr. John Franklin here, we discuss all the fights on UFC 246, McGregor versus Cowboy, McGregor versus Cerrone, whatever you'd like to call it. I will do all this with the co-host of the show, who's among a lot of things, panelist on Between the Links, the host of the MMA Takeover, part of the spearhead of this great network that's adding so many new different shows and expanding by the second, a writer of both Shore Dog and Cage Side Press. He is Keith Shillan. Mr. Shillan, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, but one thing I always like to say is we'd like to be very open with our listeners on how things going, why John is not here. John is in Vegas right now. He's hanging out with Conor McGregor. They're running around with Proper 12 and chicks, and John's part of the posse. It's him, the girl who worked at Best Buy, Conor, Cerrone's grandmother. It's like a big party.
Imagine that circle, like that round table. You just sit down and you like take a look at your meal while you're at dinner, and you look across the table. It's John, Conor, Audie Attar, maybe, Malky and Abraham Kawa trying to convince Conor to come in, and you got Grandma Cerrone right there. Can you think of a better entourage than that?
That's it. That's what John Franklin's doing right now.
Man, a lot of people would be envious of that. And my man, it was a pretty big fight, pretty big night. A lot of differences that come by way of our fandom in terms of a Conor McGregor fight night and a fight day, really fight week, whatever you'd like to call it. There's a lot of differences, and I think Dana touched on that a lot, especially promotionally in the post-fight. But let's just start talking about how is a Conor McGregor fight night is different. And I said it right before we went on the air, just a little piece of it in my world. I get casuals texting me off the chain trying to help improve their bank accounts or betting offshore accounts, whatever it is. I get more volume in my inbox just from people that don't watch the sport and love the sport like you and I do on the days and nights that Conor McGregor fights. But outside of just our little worlds, how do you kind of see what's so different about when Conor fights? What's the mood, the glow? It's just so different. How do you characterize it?
Well, you want to see how it's different? Actually, go the next morning. Put on SportsCenter. I put on SportsCenter this morning while I was getting ready. And then they were not previewing the AFC and NFC championship. They were talking about Conor McGregor.
Oh, yeah.
I was driving to my other job, and the local sports radio station was talking about Conor McGregor. So that is, the casuals come out. You start seeing Conor spelled with 2 N's in Facebook and your Twitter.
Don't forget the E, too.
Yeah, you get text messages from friends. Oh, should I bet Conor? This and that. They don't ask you. Like I had a friend ask me for betting advice, and I like Alexei Olynyk, and he's like, the hell? You ask me who wins the fight. I'd like Alexei Olynyk. So yeah, I get the betting advice. You get to a lot of the hot takes. Cerrone always sucked. Conor's not that good. Conor's was good because he didn't take Khabib serious the first time. Now he's taking him serious, and whatever. Like, you get the crazy hot takes.
The uninformed.
Simple. You go to parties and watch fights, and there's people who didn't listen to all angles. So if they don't listen to all angles, I don't know. Do they even count as being a fan?
No.
Sport? They can't be a fan of sport if they'll listen to all angles.
No chance. All Angles, one of the best shows on this podcast network. I kind of had the same thing yesterday. I implored people to take Alexa Camera as well. People are like, what? And I got a little bit worried about that for a second. Not here nor there, but a buddy of mine did get burned betting Maycee Barber on a prop for a KO, and that didn't work out too well. But regardless, we'll run down this card, obviously starting with the main event. And Keith, Conor McGregor back in the cage. When Conor McGregor fights, as we've said, it is a big fight. This one's certainly no different, despite the fact that there's no title stakes or what have you. Big fights don't always make great fights, though. It certainly wasn't a great fight, but it kind of went as most people expected, or maybe not most people, but certainly how I expected, or maybe even how Jorge Masvidal expected, because he said Conor would be dangerous out of the blocks. He established who was in charge early with shoulder strikes of all things, put Cerrone on ice skates with a head kick, finished him on top. So, Keith, Conor's back. I think that's been the narrative coming out of this for a lot of people. But is he really back? in your eyes? Is Conor McGregor really back?
Well, his fans are back. That's for sure. They were coming out of all the woodworks. Yeah, it's so tough. I don't think Donald Cerrone is the perfect person to really, or he's the wrong person to kind of get a take on. Because think about what's the narrative on Donald Cerrone that who he struggles with. He struggles with people who work the body. He struggles with southpaws. He struggles with someone who comes out fast. He struggles in the biggest fights. Well, Conor McGregor checks every single box.
Yep.
So is he back? I mean, did he leave? I mean, I guess he was out of the sport, but and he hasn't looked this good since the Eddie Alvarez fight. So if you want to say that, he looked fantastic. He looked good. He carried the weight right. He came out guns blazing, overwhelmed Cerrone. It was a flawless victory. The final strike totals was 19-0. Cerrone didn't land a strike. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Where does this rank in his all-time performances?
It's tough for me. It's tough for me to really put anything above what he did to Aldo, even though it was just a small sample size. But Aldo hadn't lost in, 11 years, 12 years? I might be off by a year or two there, but Aldo and Eddie Alvarez, that performance was, just supreme. However, you have to kind of look at it in a number sense. Like you said, Cowboy didn't land a single strike. And I think that speaks volumes, especially, he didn't really get to go to work. But right before Conor landed the head kick, Cowboy kind of fired, that patented head kick that he has in his arsenal of his own. And Conor did his due diligence to block it. And right after he landed that head kick, it was the beginning of the end for Conor. I think it's definitely up there in terms of his best performances. Was it far and away better than, let's say, his Chad Mendez performance? Yeah. Either the Diaz performances? Yeah. It's up there with Alvarez, I would think, close to second. I can't put it above Aldo, though. They're just with everything that surrounded, Aldo going into it.
So when I think about the year-end awards, this fight is going to be in the talks of certain awards, whether beatdown of the year, clutch performance of the year. It was good, Conor. The thing about the Jose Aldo fight, the thing with the Jose Aldo fight is you could say it was a lucky punch. You know what I mean? The fact that Conor kind of called the shot makes it so much more impressive. But then you're like, he ran into one punch. It happens. He's not the first guy to get one punch knocked out. You couldn't do that with the Eddie Alvarez fight.
No.
The performance he put on Eddie Alvarez, we were like, that wasn't one punch. He was landing everything. He whooped him. And I feel like this fight feels a lot more like the Eddie Alvarez fight. So, it's top three for sure. There's nothing. It's those three in his all-time performances. The shoulder shots was absolute insanity. The shocker, I'll put it up there. It's going to be my technique of the night. How could it not be a technique of the night? It was something I've been watching MMA since UFC 6, the debut of Tank Abbott, and I've seen people use shoulder strikes, and they use it kind of to stay busy on top, stay busy in the clinch, to aggravate an opponent, to maybe have him move a certain way, but it's never really used to hurt somebody. This is the first time a guy was, or I should say, seriously hurt somebody. This is the first time someone's been seriously hurt that I can remember with shoulder strikes in the UFC. It was incredible.
Yeah, man. And, I'm watching this fight with my father, who does not watch, a whole lot of MMA. And he's sitting on the other end of the room, and he's looking at me, and he's saying, "Are those legal?" And I'm looking at him, and I'm saying that they don't happen often, but I can't remember any point in time where I learned that they were not legal. I had to check myself for a second and think, because like you said, you've been watching MMA since UFC 6. I'm a little bit younger. I got into the game a little bit later. I've been watching MMA since UFC 126. And it's something that, I'm in the same boat. I had to kind of sit there and check myself and think, have you ever sat and figured out that this strike is illegal or not. And no one was saying anything on the broadcast, but we see it so rarely. And we see it, like you said, it's used to stay busy in the clinch. It's used to stay busy against the fence. And, maybe Holly or Raquel could have used some of those pointers, and we'll get to that fight in just a moment. But regardless, it was something that was so incredibly unique, and something just when you think Conor can't get any more unique than he already is, it's a technique, like you said. How can you not use it as your technique in the night? At the end of the day, it hurt Cowboy so severely. It broke his nose. I mean, at least I thought it broke his nose, or maybe it was the knee that after he whiffed on the left hand. Is that possible? I thought it was the shoulder, though.
I think it was the shoulder. I think it was the second one. The first one he hits him, kind of gets him on the cheek, and the second one is clear to face. He hits him with 4 of them. The second one was really good, and the fourth one was really good. The third one was kind of grazing. The first one was caught him, but it was kind of like on the side of the face.
Yeah.
And the second one was directly on the face, and the fourth one was directly on the face. We talked about that Cerrone was the perfect stylistic matchup, but Conor still needs to get a lot of credit. When you get the fight that you're supposed to win, you still need to get credit for winning it.
Right.
Because Cerrone was playing with house money. There was no pressure on him. He was the underdog. He was the guy that, just be happy that you're going to get the big payday, the biggest payday of your career. Conor was the guy holding everything. If you want the Masvidal fight, if you want the Khabib rematch, you want Usman, you want to be the big star of the sport, you have to win this. The Nate Diaz fight was a low point in his career, but he rebounded in the second fight.
Right.
But if you're a fan of Conor McGregor, and the last time you've seen Conor McGregor win was Eddie Alvarez, and now if you're a casual fan and you spent $70 maybe at the Mayweather fight, maybe you've never even seen Conor fight before until the Mayweather, and the Mayweather hoopla got you, and you spent what was it? Something stupid. Wasn't it like $100 for that? $90.
It was $100.
You buy that fight for $100. He loses. They get you again with a Khabib fight. You tune in. He loses again. Now you tune in a third time. How many people were going to give up on him if he lost this fight?
A lot.
If you're a casual fan, and you've never seen the Eddie Alvarez. You never saw you saw the highlights, but you never seen it live. You never bought a pay-per-view and saw this vintage Conor, the guy that said these bold things and then backed him up. You saw the Conor that said bold things to Floyd Mayweather and did well, but didn't win.
Yeah.
Or a guy said bold things to Khabib and kind of got embarrassed.
Yeah.
So I give Conor that credit. And besides that, his back against the wall, this would have been by far the worst loss of his UFC career. You go back to the Mayweather fight, he was supposed to lose that fight. You go back to the Khabib fight, most people thought he was going to lose that fight. Especially the people who really follow the sport, thought that was a tough stylistic.
Right.
This is the opposite. This is the fight he's supposed to win. People are claiming, Justin Gaethje was saying, like afterwards, like, yeah, everyone knew you were going to beat him. You handpicked Donald Cerrone. So I give Conor a lot of credit, man. The moment did not bother him one bit. And he, what also stood out to me? This guy had fought in 15 months, and he was not rusty at all. To come out as fast as he did, that's incredible.
Yeah, Dana said that after the fight. He's a big proprietor in ring rust, and, you didn't see it. And can we just get this out of the way, too? Because I want to go ahead and, yes, if you're listening to this, I am going to victimize you if this is your train of thought. If you think Cowboy Cerrone took a freaking dive, kick rocks, dude. Kick rocks. I don't even know what to say to somebody that thinks that Cowboy Cerrone took a dive. Even UFC fighters were saying that on Twitter. Felice Herrig came out and tweet, who, by the way, got attacked last night. I thought that was really strange. But she comes out and says that Cowboy took a dive. Are you out of your mind? I don't even know how to characterize such an idiotic thought process. Do you have anything to say to people out there that think Cerrone took a dive?
It's not even worth speaking on. It's not even worth acknowledging whatever. Right. It's so dumb.
Yeah,
it's just stupid casual fans saying stupid stuff like that.
Right. And
Felice Herrig is a casual fan.
Yeah, she got bloodied up last night in the streets of Vegas. I thought that was quite.
It was probably the mafia who bet on McGregor to win, and they were in the cover up. The ones who paid off Cerrone to take a fall. She exposed them, and they came after her.
Yeah, it's something like that. And we're going to be talking a lot obviously about this fight throughout the majority of this podcast. However, a lot of other fights did go down, despite not even getting close to the attention. Holm and Raquel Pennington were posted up in the co-main slot. Holly Holm is tired of losing, Keith. You know how I know that? Well, first who wouldn't be tired of losing when you're 2-5 in your last 7 fights. Holm came out and made it very clear that she was the superior grappler, and that was the fight or the path that she was going to take the fight, especially after the first fight and how it went down, the split decision nature in which it was decided. Pennington's back was against the cage most of the time. I thought they should have been split up on multiple occasions. Dana White certainly agreed with me. And they said on the broadcast, Randy Couture won belts fighting the way that Holly fought last night. And when he does do it, he's a legend. But when Holly Holm does it, I guess she's boring. Talk about the fight on that front and your thoughts on that statement.
Well, I'm going to defend Randy Couture. So before I was a media member, obviously I was a fan. Randy Couture is my all-time favorite fighter. So I didn't listen. I didn't hear that. I blocked out a lot of this fight. It was such a boring fight. To compare what Holly Holm did to Randy Couture is silly. Like, what belt did Randy Couture win by holding against the cage and doing nothing?
Yeah.
Like when he won the title against Maury Smith. He picked him up, slammed him, and controlled him on top and beat him up. He did the same to Kevin Randleman. He out-wrestled a multi-time national champion wrestler in Kevin Randleman and beat him up when he won the second time. When he won the third UFC title, he floored Tim Sylvia. When he won the light heavyweight, he won a stand-up battle against Chuck Liddell. When he beat Vitor Belfort the second time, he pounded him out. Maybe the Gonzaga fight is the one you're talking about where you held him against the fence. He also broke Gonzaga's nose with an elbow, and Gonzaga was gushing blood all over the place. So I credit John Anik, if he's the one who said it, for trying.
I think it was Rogan, actually. I think it was Rogan.
Okay, well, I'll credit Rogan for trying, but Rogan has a bad memory because it's just not true.
Yeah, I took exception to that a little bit, but as you said, the Gonzaga fight would be somewhere where you could draw comparisons to it. I don't know how you don't split these two up, especially, clinching against the fence for as long as they did. And, I get the sentiment that if it's working, why would you go against it? And Holly, I guess, had something to prove, but I mean, what did she really prove in this fight? I'll say this too. Our good friend Marcel, friend of the network, tweeted this, and I thought he was spot on. UFC's got a problem at 135 because I don't see Holly or Jermaine Durandamy, unless Ketlin Vieira comes back and kind of rights the wrongs that she had in her last fight. I think they got a problem in that division because if those two keep winning, who are you going to give to Amanda?
Well, Jermaine Durandamy lost to her twice already.
Yeah.
Holly Holm got knocked out unconscious, and do you really want to give Holly Holm a title fight? I mean, I guess the number one contender to me right now would be Irene Aldana.
Yeah.
But it's still not the most sexy. I mean, that's a co-main event, maybe a third fight down from the top.
I think she needs another win, to be honest with you.
As far as, there's no one else. They kind of have no choice. Amanda Nunes has wiped out the division. Mm-hmm. Holly Holm is one of the most boring fighters in the history of the UFC. I'll just say that right now. Holly Holm, other than the Ronda Rousey fight, when were you really excited by a Holly Holm performance? I mean, she knocked out Betch Kelleher, but people forget that for half the fight, she was losing and doing nothing. She was staying out distance. What I always say, Holly Holm likes it, like shadow box or air strike, where she throw punches at the space in between them and make noises. Yeah. It's Caitlin Chikagian. It's like copies Holly Holm to a T with it, where they stay busy by throwing in the air and not engaging, and then tricking the judges into pretending that it's a closer fight. She is boring. She does that, and now we have wrestling Holly Holm, who's not. I mean, other than Megan Anderson, she's not going to be able to out-wrestle a lot of people. So, I mean, this was terrible. She was holding. She wasn't busy in the clinch. She was stronger than Raquel Pennington, and she used leverage on Raquel Pennington. She wasn't trying to get takedowns from there. She wasn't trying to dirty box. She was doing nothing.
She was formidable too. I mean, if I'm going to give her credit, I agree with pretty much everything you said. It seemed like every single time Raquel had any type of positional advantage, Holly would turn her around right away. And I think you could draw the comparison again. We'll get to this fight in a moment. The Yusuff and Fili fight was kind of the same way. Every time Fili took Yusuff down, Yusuff got right back up. It was kind of the same sense, except in the clinch, where Holly would reverse position to her advantageous spot every single time Pennington would get any type of leverage, at least in the clinch or against the fence. And, I think you've kind of opened my eyes a little bit by saying that, because a lot of people will have a knee-jerk kind of reaction when you say, Holly Holm's a boring fighter. Be like, whoa, like, well, what about Ronda Rousey? But then what else? Like, yeah, the head kick, Betch Correia is there, but can we just be honest here? Betch Correia, not very good, at least in my opinion. But,
I mean, think about the first fight between these two. It was boring. Think about this fight. It was a lot of the air striking. Look at this fight. It was boring. Megan Anderson, she won by wrestling and holding on, not doing anything. She made Valentina Shevchenko fight boring. And Valentina won that one, but it was boring. Miesha Tate, which people forget, Miesha Tate took her down in the first round, was winning, and the next 3 rounds, Holly Holm played the air punching game, and then Miesha Tate got the takedown, got the submission, the chokeout, but she was en route to a boring fight. Go back to before Ronda Rousey, the Marion Renault fight. It was a boring fight. Remember, people remember this. People were complaining about Holly Holm getting the title shot off of a boring win over Marion Renault.
Right.
Holly Holm was, in her UFC career, the Ronda Rousey fight is the one that was really stands out. But it's because Ronda Rousey ran at her with a chin in the air, like she was the perfect stylistic matchup for her. Like the worst possible strategy for Holly Holm.
Took the words right out of my mouth. It was really a perfect stylistic matchup that a lot of people didn't see coming, just because, women's bantamweight and as a whole, the UFC in general was just so different in what was it, 2013, 2014, or maybe I'm off by a couple years, 2014, like somewhere around there when this all, no, I'm definitely off a couple years. 2016, 2015.
She fought Ronda Rousey in 2015.
Yeah, 2015. I figured I was probably off by a couple of years without looking at it. But at the end of the day, that's just really the one feather in her cap that she has. And, like I said, could be a knee-jerk reaction. How do you matchmake for Holly going up next? I know we'll get into matchmaking soon. But as I've kind of said, and again, I applaud Marcel for putting this out into the open, they've got a problem right now at 135, because if you're trying to build Amanda Nunes as a star and Claressa Shields, even though I'm against making that happen, I think you kind of would echo the sentiment that we need to throw a blanket and cover up any type of boxing MMA crossovers that might potentially come our way. What else is there potentially for Amanda? I could see them giving Amanda Holly again, just based on the simple fact that there's not going to be anyone else to raise their hand.
Well, you're absolutely right. The division is, you got Jermaine Durrani, 35 years old. She's lost twice to Amanda Nunes already. Raquel Pennington, Amanda Nunes made her quit. Caitlin Vera, who's a girl that we got excited about, got hurt, tore up her knee really bad, was out for almost 2 years. Comes back, gets knocked out unconscious. Holly Holm was knocked out unconscious. She's got 1 million title shots. Let me answer this question. Everyone, if I said, what's Holly Holm's best performance? Obviously, Ronda Rousey. What was her second best performance?
That's a good question. And it really might be
holding down Megan Anderson?
Maybe. And even
being a better wrestler than Megan Anderson?
And even there, just thinking about that card in retrospect,
Yeah, punching Betch Correia in the first round. Raquel Pennington. I guess Betch Correia knockout is her second best performance.
But it was just
a fight that she was losing the majority of it.
Yeah.
100%. A fight that she was actually getting outstruck by Betch Correia to the point where Betch Correia was started taunting in her, and that's when she got the knockout.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to keep going on, I guess Irene Aldana is the one. The return of Juliana Pena, and Juliana Pena and Aspen Ladd. I don't like that matchup. You have two contenders going against each other, eliminating one. You're in a division where you don't have a lot of contenders. Why have them face each other?
Right.
And then you go down to 40-year-old Mariano, Yana Kunitskaya. She's lost 3 out of her last 6. I mean, Lena Landsberg is a legit contender in that division. The Lena Landsberg versus Sarah McMann matchup. 37-year-old Lena Landsberg versus 39-year-old Sarah McMann, who hasn't fought in 2 years and just had a baby.
Yep.
Just had a baby. That is a very important matchup in this division. And it's going on. It's going on a couple days from now, and no one's even paying attention. Like it is a terrible division. It is an absolute terrible division. And you know why? Hold on. Do you know why it is? This is case in point. What I tell people, we don't need to add divisions. Look what happened to 135.
Yeah,
you added 145 above it and 125 below it, and look what happened. Not a whole bunch, but a couple fighters went to 145, and a whole bunch of fighters went to 125. And what left 135? Nothing.
Right.
If you add a 165-pound division, these 2 loaded divisions, welterweight and lightweight, will not be at. It's the more loaded than these, but won't be as loaded anymore if you add that division. Just how it will be. It's common sense.
Totally. I'm with you on that, especially in the female MMA side of things. And let's not bore our listeners to sleep any longer.
Yeah. That's more than I thought we'd talk about Hollywood.
and let's move on to a heavyweight fight that, I mean, such a weird clash of styles. I saw a lot of people kind of tweeting, how is this fight on the main card of, let alone a Conor fight, let alone any fight card, regardless. You got to have something to say about a guy winning a fights in 4 different decades. And it's been a minute since the bulk constrictor had his hand raised in meaningful competition, a forgettable stretch by the hands of Walt Harris, God rest Anaya Blanchard's soul. And both Alistair Overeem and Harris alike finished him in the first round. More recently, Gordon Ryan pulled his knee in a way that the Lord had not intended it to be pulled at a quintet grappling meet. Tonight was different, however. Olynyk was able to take some big shots, and he did take a few big shots. A head kick in the second round that kind of grazed him, being the one that stood out. But Greene withstood a neck crank that most men would have tapped to. The Russian hung in there and was still able to find an arm. It was a hell of a fight, apropos to what most people believe. Olynyk may be on his way out, but he gets called out by former heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum off of his suspension. Talk about this fight, man. What do you think Olynyk has left, and maybe what Greene may or may not have ahead, following last night's performance?
So Olynyk is now he's 42 years old.
Yeah.
He has 46 submission wins. Absolute he's got 12 submission wins by Ezekiel choke. Like, I don't know if anybody ever in history has an Ezekiel choke but him. They should just call it the Olynyk choke.
They should.
You know what, dude? Some people might hate watching him. I don't know if it's being that it's a heavyweight getting all these submissions, or that his submissions are it's not arm bars, it's not rear naked chokes, it's these creative neck cranks and Ezekiel chokes. I love watching Alexei Olynyk. He's fun. You see him and he's not athletic. He's slow. The way he gets inside is weird, but it's just fun watching. He reminds me of the guy that goes to the YMCA and he's got his knee is all bandaged up. He's like John Franklin's age. He's like a little bit. He's like John Franklin's age. And he's hanging out at the YMCA and like the young 20-year-olds like you are like playing, and he's still taped up. He maybe have the eye goggles on, but the guy can still ball.
Yeah.
Like, that's Alexei. You ever know that guy who goes to, like, you know what I'm talking about? The guy
absolutely
goes up, but he can still ball. And you're like, man, the old man. He shoots weird. He shoots like he shoots some weird angles, and he drives in the lane and he finger rolls and he does a hook shot. That's Alexei Olynyk. Like, he shouldn't be hitting the hook shot, but like if Alexei Olynyk was a basketball player, he'd be hitting the hook shot.
Frustrating everybody under 25 that's on the floor.
Yeah, he'd be doing pick and rolls and stuff,
fundamentals.
You know what? He's 42 years old. He probably should retire. I want him to fight forever. I want him just to fight forever. Like, when he's too old and he's getting beat by guys he shouldn't get beat by in the UFC, I just want him to go off to Russia and fight guys. I just want him to fight forever. As far as the Fabricio Verdum call-out, that's actually a fight I'm not interested in seeing. Wow. If it was a grappling match, it'd be fun. But what I expect I'd expect Verdum to keep it standing and just pick him apart at the feet, that wouldn't be fun. Because Verdum's a much better striker. I could see him just beating up Olynyk on the feet. I don't want to see that. If they promised me the guy would throw punches and they would just grapple, sign me up.
I'm with you. And I'm with you and I retweeted your tweet last night when you said you love watching the guy fight. Can we just also for a second, I got to give Maurice Greene some credit. That scarful neck crank that was in for what, a minute and a half? And that it's not that you're having your blood circulation cut off. It's not that you're in fear of going to sleep. Neck cranks just suck. They just hurt. And the fact that he was able to withstand it for as long as he did, and then these two guys come out in the second round and they just look like they're fighting in slow motion. And Olynyk, what I like about watching Olynyk fight is not only do you know what he's going to do, he attempts to walk through the fire just because he wants to get as close to you as he possibly can in order to get his hands on you, dirty box in the clinch, take you down whatever way he can. And that arm bar was in such a weird way too. I'm with you. It's unorthodox. It's strange. It's definitely not apropos to what we normally see in the heavyweight division. I'm sure his family would love him to hang it up now, especially with how the Alistair Overeem and Walt Harris fights went. I'd be cool with seeing him fight for a while as well. Just the Verdum fight, though, is interesting to me, and I have a feeling they might make it, but I kind of forget. Didn't they shorten Verdum's suspension?
He's up in April.
That's what I thought. I'd be kind of down for it, but yeah, like you said, I'd rather see him kind of tangle it up on the ground.
I want to see him go again. I like the idea of putting the old man against the up and coming, like put him against like Augusto Sakai or something, like someone that's
exactly who I was going to say, like
a guy that would give him a challenge, but there's a area where he can win. There's an avenue where he can win. I want that. I want to see Alexei Olynyk fight forever.
Me too, man. I'm absolutely with you, and it's going to be interesting to see who they make him with next. As I go through our notes, it seems like we might be a little bit out of place here, but we'll talk about this fight next. The Kelleher fight was right before that, but we got Diego Ferreira and Anthony Pettis up next in our notes, and I think that was a little bit more of an important fight, especially for a division as stacked as lightweight than most people were kind of putting it on. This next fight, I'm sure, Keith, is definitely going to put a smile on your face because we have now come to the Fortis MMA portion of the show. Carlos Diego Ferreira has been on a little bit of a run, just like a lot of his teammates are. You know, the Alonzo Menafields and the Jeff Neals of the world. That gym is just absolutely on fire. He's got 2 losses. Both came back 5 years ago in 2015. But recently it's been a couple of wins over some fellas with V's at the end of their name and Russia on their birth certificates. Merbek Taisumov, Rustam Habilov, and now you come back to the States, you add Anthony Pettis to the list. He hasn't had a big-name fight since Dustin Poirier. It didn't go his way, but last night he got one in Anthony Pettis. Pettis now 1-2 in his last 3. Outside of the Thompson fight, had that kind of gone the way that we most expected it to, he could be 0-3 in his last 3. But a win over Stephen Thompson sandwiched in between losses to Ferguson and Diaz. Pettis looked good. He was moving well, landing some shots. He found the neck Ferreira, found the neck in the second round before the ref got involved. And Keith, it's time now for you to cape for Fortis MMA. But first off, is Ferreira ready for the top of the food chain, or is Anthony Pettis just kind of seeing the best days of his career?
I think Ferreira is a top 15-ish lightweight. I'll say some crazy things. I think stylistic matchups, Ferreira would do very well against some guys. I think Ferreira would give Tony Ferguson a really good matchup, stylistically.
Yeah.
I think he would struggle with Justin Gaethje. I think he would struggle with – I think he'd give Kevin Lee a really good fight. Like this, styles make fights, and his style would give some people fits. But then I also think there's guys in the division probably ranked lower that he would struggle with. Anthony Pettis, I thought this was one of the easiest fights to pick on the card. I was all in on Fajardo. Rafael dos Anjos showed a long time ago how to beat Anthony Pettis. You make him fight off his back foot, you pressure him, you add in takedowns, and you don't let him control his distance. Pettis looks better. I still think he looks better at lightweight. He was moving well. But the key word is he was moving. Fajardo kept to a game plan to force him to fight off his back foot, nonstop pressure, close the distance, and he was the better grappler, which not many people can say on the ground with Anthony Pettis. Fajardo is a legit black belt. And it goes, Fortis MMA, I've been saying this, I think they're the best team in MMA. I've been saying I've been saying where I think they were up there. I'm ready to crown them. I think it's what they do for fighters, and I think you got to start seeing more and more. You're starting to see other fight like Uriah Hall, a guy who's like established, because everyone's homegrown there. We're just now starting to see the guys who are coming to them. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And honestly, a change of scenery for Anthony Pettis might make a lot of sense. I know Duke Rufus is his guy and everything, and he's been with him forever, but he could use the change of scenery. And 4-7 MMA could work for him. I also think he needs to be changed of scenery. I think it's time for him to be gone. I think he should go to Bellator. I think he should ask for his release like his brother. And if I'm the UFC, I'd give it to him because he's done. Anybody who wants to pressure Anthony Pettis and can keep the foot on the gas pedal is going to beat him.
And the Thompson fight has kind of been a staple in, what many people were calling, a revival, what have you. It's, when it happens in the moment, you sit there and it's like, oh my God. But, he was losing every single second of
He took a Hail Mary.
It was a Hail Mary.
He landed a punch where jumping off the cage is something that Stephen Thompson wasn't ready for, and it made him close the distance much quicker than Stephen Thompson would expect because he gets springed off the cage. And then he knocked out Stephen Thompson for it. But, yeah, if anything, it gave a false sense of who he was.
Absolutely. And, yeah, people forget he was really losing every single moment of that fight up until, the Hail Mary, Doug Flutie, whatever you want to call it. It's exactly the right narrative to paint it. I, for one, think that Fajardo, this was long overdue. And in terms of him getting a name the size of Anthony Pettis, and maybe people didn't really pay attention. Maybe some people did. But at the end of the day, I hope people know the type of threat Carlos Diego Fajardo is now. And, another feather in the cap for Fortis MMA, who it's really hard right now to put another gym on top of them as far as the hottest in the sport. Like we said, we're a little bit out of order. Regardless, though, in the bantamweight division, Brian Kelleher, talk about stopping a hype train. There was a big oncoming hype train coming in on Ode Osborn, or at least from my perspective. A lot of people were super high on him coming into this weekend. And Ode Osborn hit a quick armbar on a guy you've never heard of in the Contender Series. And on the strength of that, he came in as the betting favorite against Brian Kelleher, the 5th grade and 6th grade math teacher. He came in with a lot of hype, but the Long Island, Strong Island, whatever you want to call it, native Brian Kelleher put his ass in detention as he snatched his neck in round 1. I picked Osborn. Maybe I kind of fell victim to the hype train. I thought that Osborn maybe might not have a coming out party. I did pick him by decision. I thought this fight was going to be a little bit, on the contrary to exciting. Do you have any thoughts, post-fight about how this went down? Kelleher's back against the wall, too. I thought that was
definitely. He was probably fighting for his position in the UFC. He posted afterwards about it, like, I'm still here now, something like that, or the show goes on or something like that. So he knew that this is it. He loses. Osborn, he had flashes. Like, there was moments where he looked like that hyped out prospect. He was picking up, he was piecing up Brian Kelleher to start.
Fast.
Then he got taken down, which is really it's surprising that when I've done film study on him, when I did the previews to the Contender Series, how easily he got taken down by low-level wrestlers. This is a guy that was a 3-time state champion wrestler in high school in Wisconsin, and he wrestled in NCAAs, and he gets taken down. Like, Brian Kelleher took him out with ease. Like, his first shot he shot, got in deep, picked him up, slammed him. And then when he tried to scramble, he got that, like, topside guillotine, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful setup, nice way to get it. I feel like Osborn just got caught, but he seems to me, being by how easily he's been taken out, he seems like a guy who I don't know if I'm saying this word correctly. help me out. Compartmentalize his
Compartmentalize.
Yes, I can't even say the word right. But he's a guy that does that. Like he's striking or he's wrestling. He's not in an MMA fight. And until he fixes that, it's gonna be a problem. So I'm sure if he's wrestling, he's ready. All right, we're gonna wrestle now. He probably stuffs those takedowns. But the fact that he can't, it's like a switch on and off instead of a blend together. That's gonna be a problem until he does.
No, I'm with you. And yeah, maybe I fell victim to the hype train a little bit as well because I did pick Osborn. I was a little surprised he was the betting favorite because, again, as I touched on earlier, when I'm getting all these texts from people asking me, who I'm betting on, and a lot of traffic from these texts, we're talking about Osborn. And I'm just like, hold on. First of all, if you're a casual and you're so high on Osborn, you got to tell me why. Second of all, Osborn, Brian Kelleher, maybe he's not fought the who's who of the bantamweight division out there. John Lineker, maybe the best fighter he's fought in this division so far. Submitting Yuri Alcantara was pretty impressive, especially on short notice. But regardless, Kelleher's back was against the wall, and he came out, and not only did he get a much-needed win, he gets $50,000 in his pocket. And it's hard to say that there's a lot better outcomes than that. Regardless, we move on to the prelims, and I think this main prelim is one that was on the tip of a lot of people's tongues. And, let's go ahead and start with the quote-unquote future Maycee Barber. But in the present, man, she had a bad night. She looked bad. She got injured. The knee buckled whenever she got kind of dropped to the jab. You heard her kind of scream and saw her face. For some reason, you thought she was pulling a Kanye West, stealing Modafferi's moment. Stealing it, kind of going apropos to the Taylor Swift, Beyonce had one of the best music videos of all time. I got to say, in my opinion, I thought that was a little bit out of bounds. I thought that it really kind of irritated me when she took the mic and felt like she had to put in her 2 cents. Lauren Murphy, Marion Renault, people kind of in the same boat. They tweeted their own, distaste to that as well. Keith, is this just a bad night for Maycee Barber or a peek into what we might see from her consistently going forward?
Yeah, well, I was going to save the grabbing the microphone for Enough or Nothing, but yeah, I think that was a terrible decision. Like, you lost the fight, give Modafferi her moment, don't come over and steal it. It reminded me of when Forrest Griffin did that on Tito Ortiz when Tito was retiring, and it's not that big of a deal now because Tito has retired like 12 times, but at that time it was supposed to be Tito Ortiz's retirement. Forrest Griffin came in, and so I'm going to say something that's going to probably be a little controversial. The torn ACL, while obviously is a terrible thing, and we find out it wasn't just a partial tear, she completely tore it, is almost a good thing for Maycee Barber because I spoke with 3 people about this fight, all casual fans, and they all were like, wow, how tough is that girl Maycee Barber fighting with a torn ACL? Wow, she's so tough, hopping on one leg. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So the narrative is how tough Maycee Barber is. It wasn't that she was a huge favorite who, before tearing her ACL, was getting outboxed by Roxanne Modafferi, then taken down by Roxanne Modafferi, and then absolutely controlled on the ground in the first round by Roxanne Modafferi, where I gave it a 10-9 round, but it could have been a 10-8 round.
It could have been.
So
one judge did have it a 10-8 round.
This is a girl that her and Ben Askren was saying from like this time next year she'd beat Valentina Shevchenko, and she was losing handily to Roxanne Modafferi in the first round. Now, she lost the first round to J.J. Aldridge. She was looking bad. She looked like she was not going well, and she kind of turned up. So that may have happened. But the point being is she kind of has an excuse now. It's always going to be about her torn ACL. It was kind of like, do you remember when Tyron Woodley fought Carlos Condit and Carlos Condit torn his ACL?
Yep. And
that's always turned that narrative that Carlos Condit torn his ACL. Well, what about when Tyron Woodley was putting it on them before that? I felt the same way with like this. There's some holes. The fact that she couldn't get Roxanne Modafferi off of her is a major issue.
I agree.
She got taken down, and I'll give her a pass on the second and third round, but the first round, you can't give away the first round. I'm not saying she gave away, and I'm not saying she gave away. I'm not saying she slowed up. I think Roxanne went on and took it from her, And I think it might have been a lot of the same in the second, third round if that fight went on.
Yeah, man. And not only that, at the end of the day, we're now talking about Roxanne Modafferi in the light to where, she beats Antonina Shevchenko handily. She beats Maycee Barber handily. And to talk about again with the mic grab, the comment that really bugged me? The comment where towards the end, where it's like, I'm not bothered that this isn't my moment because now we can give the moment for Roxanne to shine. Like, please, dude. Like, come on, get out of here with that. Like that. I don't even know what to say about that. It was spoiled. It was distasteful. It was something that really bothered me. And you know what I've also noticed too? People are more so bagging on Maycee than they are talking about Roxanne in a serious light, which I get. Like, I mean, Roxanne is not beating Valentina anytime soon, if not ever. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are trying to jump all over Maycee Barber as quick as they can, more so than they are giving Roxanne credit. And I think that also bothers me. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she grabbed the mic and had to get off what she needed to say. Joe Rogan really should have just been like, no, like you lost, get out, go away. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm kind of over it. Is what it is, but she's got some holes in her game that needs to be fixed, and if she doesn't fix it, the only thing I want to take on before we move on to the next fight is I'm in the minority of this, but I think her corner should throw the towel in between the second and third round. Yeah. When a doctor goes in there and announces to everybody pretty much that she has a torn ACL, she's down 2-0. She's hopping on one foot. Why let her go in there and take more damage? I thought they should have threw the towel in.
Yeah, you don't see it in MMA though. We talk about it all the time.
Well, that's a problem. The cornerman, you need cornermen who will do that.
I agree, and maybe set an example in a sense like that. But I digress. We move on to a fight that I think a lot of people thought deserved the main card billing. Sadiq Yusuff as one of the hottest prospects at 145 pounds. I'm just going to go ahead and give you the floor, man. Keith, the fight kind of went Sadiq's way in rounds 1 and 2, and Andre kind of came on strong in round 3, whether Sadiq took his foot off the gas or not. Go ahead, give me your thoughts on this, what you think the ceiling could be for Sadiq. And, Andre Fili kind of looked like he thought he had the fight won right before they announced it. I didn't. I had it scored exactly how the judges did, 29-28. What say you?
Yeah, I want to disagree with the line that you said that he had the first 2 rounds of the bag. I thought the first round was a toss-up. I think he may have saved himself by getting that Kimura right at the end of the round, but it was a toss-up. But that said, Sadiq shows he's a prospect that I'm so high on this guy. His hand speed is incredible. His power is incredible. The fact that he's added in a takedown game, the fact that he was able to not only take down Andre Fili but keep him pinned for pretty much the entire second round was really impressive. The thing that I'm really worried about is his fight IQ. The fact that he just turned off the third round, not realizing that the first round was close, that there was a chance that he could have lost that round, and to give away the round, that really bothered me. And I kind of wish he had a little Fili in him, because Fili is a guy who has a limited talent, skill set, but he gets everything out of it that has made him a good fighter, has made him a borderline top 15 guy, because he finds a way to get all his talent out. And if that's something, if Fili could do that, this guy could be a world champ.
Yeah, man. And I'm
sorry, Yusuff. I'm sorry. If Yusuff can get what Fili does, he could be a world champ.
I thought it was interesting, too, to hear at the very beginning, because I don't think Andre Fili gets a whole lot of run in terms of his talent. I thought it was interesting in the beginning. I can't remember which commentator said it, but when they asked Max Holloway, think about all the killers, right before the Volkanovski fight that Max Holloway's had to go through. And they asked Max who his toughest competition was, and Max said that it was Andre Fili. And Andre Fili, coming into this fight, had won 4 of his last 5, and the only fight was, in my opinion, a bogus judge's decision, a loss to Michael Johnson that I thought he won. So he came in, in a lot of people's eyes, the winner of his last 5 in a row, if you kind of throw that out there. Yusuff now tied for second with Dan Ige. and Hakeem Dawodu for the second longest win streak in the division. I think if you're matchmaking for him, maybe if you can't get a top 15 guy to say yes, I think Arnold Allen makes a lot of sense, especially with, the Josh Emmett fight falling out. I would like to see, just like out of a pure fight perspective, not having anything to do with the pecking order in the featherweight division, I would love to see Sadiq Yusuff and Hakeem Dawodu get turned loose in the octagon. Like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if that's the smartest move to make matchmaking-wise as far as the trajectory for both of their careers. And as you said earlier, you're kind of killing off a young contender that's coming up. But just as a guy that loves to watch good fights, that would be a fight I'd be all in on.
Yeah, I think Yusuff is a little further in his career than Dawodu is right now. But yeah.
No, I agree. And the second longest win streak, Dan Ige, a guy that is going to fight next month. He's won 4 in a row in that division as well. I think the sky is the limit, as you kind of touched on, for Sadiq Yusuff. And maybe the sky might be the limit for what a lot of people thought coming in for Nasrat Haqparast. However, that hype train got shut down quickly. Drew Dober, 1 minute and 10 seconds in, winning via strike. Should have been maybe 1:04, 1:05. I believe it was Mark Smith that was refereeing that fight. I mean, come on, man. Yeah, there were about 4 or 5 punches that were unnecessary that landed there. Haqparast loses by knockout for the first time in his career. Drew Dober teach you anything there, man? I thought he was dubiously impressive.
And this is a guy that he's getting more impressive every time. He's got some real power in his hands and some really solid kickboxing. And you can't throw a naked kick. You can't throw naked kicks. That's what Haqparast said. You have to set up the kicks. He threw a naked kick, and Dober made him pay for it. Really, really good win. Terrible stoppage. I mean, there's not really much to add to this. Other than that, we skipped over the Tim Elliott Askarov fight.
Right, that was next. That was next in the notes. But like you said, not a whole lot to say about it. Only 70 seconds to say about it. But another guy that went home 50K richer, and now Dober back to back, really impressive first round showings. Comes on the mic and says he'll knock anybody out at 155 pounds. Don't know if I'd go that far. But regardless, Askar Askarov and Tim Elliott. Askar Askarov earning the first decision victory of his career, now coming off of a boatload of submissions, and he can get you in any type of submission, as he proved on the ACA circuit. Tim Elliott, maybe not the guy that you would gauge his true talent off of. I think Tim Elliott's seen better days. And maybe Askar Askarov, a lot of people are going to have question marks about him, going forward. In my opinion, this is a guy that I loved the potential ceiling for coming into the UFC, much like many others. Do you feel like you could be more impressed with him after these 2 fights? I get Brandon Moreno is kind of fighting better than he ever has in his career, according to some at the moment. But any takeaways for what Askarov might be headed towards? It looks like he's going to climb the rankings. You're on mute, buddy.
Oh, sorry. How about the cardio on Tim Elliott? That was very impressive. Like he didn't stop. That said, think about the pace that Moreno faced. So the face Moreno, we talked about, that he faded late. That's probably why it was a draw against Moreno. Some people thought Moreno should have got the win, and then he goes against Tim Elliott. He comes out with even higher pace, and then he was able to handle this time. The fact that he is looks like he's improving his cardio, and he's starting to add some power into his hands. I mean, he almost knocked out Tim Elliott in the first round. I really think Askar Askarov is a legit threat that could be challenged for the title one day if he continues to make the improvements that he is.
I agree. And how the hell did Tim Elliott not go down face first after catching?
He looked like he was out on his feet. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he kind of looked like Joe Dirt too. If we're just gonna be honest here, maybe the mullet's got to go. Not very aerodynamic, but regardless, as we continue to trudge along this card, big fan of Alexa Camera. One Stipe Miocic, you could see with his raspy voice towards the end of the fight, hands up, hands up. Get kind of cheering on his teammate Alexa Camera making his UFC debut last night against a guy at Justin Ledet that a lot of people had high hopes for coming in, and it's kind of crashed and burned. The Alexander Rakic fight, definitely want to forget. Can't really forget what happened to Johnny Walker, being that fight happened so quickly. Ledet's 3-fight losing skid, not only the longest of his career, but before that skid happened, he was undefeated and hasn't earned a victory now since September of 2017. Any takeaways from this fight? I thought Kelleher kind of showed a lot of, as Rogan would say, greenness in this fight.
Yeah, so I do that. Sean Bitter puts out an article in Cage Side Press where he asks about us to review or preview, I should say, the guys who are making their debuts. And Kelleher is the guy that I'm not that very high on. I'm not that impressed with him. I think he's very raw. And this fight is aggravating because Justin Ledet should have won this fight. And not in the sense that he got ripped off by the judges. What I mean is when he threw, he landed and he hurt him and he landed the best shots. He just didn't throw.
Yeah.
He just gave the fight away. It's like, dude, get aggressive. I feel like it was like a team that was, on the 30-yard line, they got to go 70 yards, and there's 1 minute left, and they're handing off the ball instead of throwing. Like, what are you doing, man? The game, the game is right there, and you're running the ball. You're letting the time go away. You're not doing anything because when he's throwing, he's letting his hands go. He was rocking Kelleher. It was a very aggravating fight if you're a fan of Justin Ledet, and a terrible performance in my opinion. But I felt like this was more of a Justin Ledet loss than a Kelleher win.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. And finally, last but not least, the first fight on the card. This was a fun fight. Sabina Mazo and J.J. Aldrich. I've been a big fan of Sabina Mazo coming in. I thought you were coming into the UFC, kind of the second kind of swear of female head kick knockout, so to say, because she did a whole lot of that on the regional circuit, particularly in the LFA. She has only won both of her UFC victories by decision now, though, after topping Shayna Dobson, losing to Marina Moroz, I believe, without looking it up off the top of my head. Aldrich now, ever since she got kind of her sentiment performance against, I believe it was Polyana Viana at UFC 227, she's kind of come back to earth ever since. Any takeaways from this fight? I still think that Mazo has a pretty high ceiling. I think that maybe some people are hopping off the train, though. What say you, Mr. Shillan?
Well, I scored the fight for J.J. Aldrich. I gave her the first 2 rounds. I had to lose in the 3rd round. That said, it was a close fight. It wasn't a robbery by any means. Mazo, what I was impressed is that the adjustment she made, once she realized that she had such an advantage in the clinch, she went right for it in the 3rd round, and that was probably the difference in the fight. She might have sold the 2nd round with the clinch too, so that's probably where the judges gave it to her. But I mean, understand that Aldridge didn't make the adjustments, and Mazo did. While I still gave it to Aldridge, I'm okay with the decision.
Yeah, I thought that it was controversial. The first round would really be what you would gauge the questioning on. I still happen to believe that Mazo's got a pretty high ceiling. She does need to make some improvements, but regardless, we move on. Now let's take care of some housekeeping. For the first time in the UFC's history, because Dana, quote-unquote, was feeling generous, 5 performance of the night bonuses were handed out. There was no fight of the night, and I thought that was the right call. The UFC promotional guidelines compliance payout was $165,000. Those 5 bonuses, as mentioned, went to Conor McGregor, which, okay, whatever. Alexei Olynyk, Brian Kelleher, Diego Fajardo, and Drew Dober, who could all use them a lot more than maybe Conor McGregor, but that's not here nor there. Like we said, it was the first time in company history that 5 performance of the night bonuses were given. Debuting fighters went 1-1 on the card, with Alexa Kelleher getting the victory, the lone one to say. It drew an announced attendance of 19,040 for the live gate. Very impressive live gate. 11, just south of $11,100,000. The live gate total was the 4th highest in company history. Betting favorites went 6-4 on the card. There was 1 fight that had dead even odds, and the total fight time for the 11-bout card was 1 hour, 51 minutes, and 3 seconds. All right, man, let's go ahead and move on to the fun stuff now that we've got that out of the way. Let's start with trending up and trending down. Go ahead and tell me who you've got trending up.
So I had 3. The first one I put was Drew Dober. I mean, to get the knockout that he did over a guy, Hawkbrows, a guy that people were calling a future contender. I thought he had a great night. Askar Askarov, I thought he had a really great night. And then, I mean, how could you not have Conor trending up? So those are my 3.
I think Drew, if I had to pick one, it would definitely be Drew Dober. Like we said earlier, a guy that's now coming off of back-to-back KO wins in the first round. I thought And really good matchmaking, too, because if we can remember, Nasrat Haqparast and Drew Dober both coming off first-round knockouts on the same night last year in that UFC, I believe it was Minneapolis card. A lot of people pegged Drew Dober as maybe a sacrificial lamb here. Nasrat Haqparast getting a lot of run as a top prospect at 155, and I thought he came out and was stellar. Keith, who you got trending down?
So this is the biggest list I've ever had. I got 5 guys for trending down. First one, Nasrat Haqparast, we just talked about. Justin Ledet, I mean, he's lost 3 in a row now. Maycee Barber, this is the girl that, people are thinking – some people actually thought that she'd get a win here, that she might actually get a title shot. Now she's going to be sitting on the sidelines for a year with a torn ACL. Anthony Pettis looked, the guy is just not a contender anymore. I think he needs to go to Bellator. I hope he takes Holly Holm with him. I think they both could make a change of scene. and the last one, Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone just getting knocked out 3 fights in a row.
Yeah. Donald Cerrone is definitely the obvious pick for kind of trending down. I think for me, it's Anthony Pettis and definitely Tim Elliott. I get it. Like, he got his title shot off the Ultimate Fighter or whatever. They really just needed to pick whoever they could to fight Demetrius Johnson at that point in time. But regardless, Tim Elliott, a guy that is definitely now trending down. Anthony Pettis as well. All right, man. Let's move on to Not For Nothing. I have 3 here that are our good friend John's, and he wanted me to read them. Like we said, he's out in Vegas hanging out with Grandma Cerrone and everybody else, so he's not going to hear this. But he wanted me to read these, so here we go. I'll go ahead and read the first one, and then if you've got a Not For Nothing, go ahead and we'll go back and forth. I do happen to agree with this, even though he is pegging me to read this. Not for nothing, but it's fine to say that Stephen A. Smith knows nothing about MMA. And it's also fine to agree that with ESPN's coverage spearheading the UFC now, that his face is going to be there when it comes to these types of fights and these types of big events. But please, man, can we give me a better word to describe Cowboys' performance other than atrocious? Tatiana Suarez had a good hashtag for it earlier. Hashtag, this is not basketball. I think that speaks volumes. Because, I mean, what are you going to do when you get kicked, when you have a toe, a shin, whatever it is, right to the chin? I didn't expect more from him, and I happen to be a fan of Stephen A. Smith. I hope I don't get crucified for that, but definitely not a fan of him in the MMA space.
That's it. That all you had?
Yeah.
Okay. I got 2 Not For Nothings. I had the Maycee Barber one, but I got 2 more. Not For Nothing. If we have a major UFC card, can we not have college basketball on? Can we just can the UFC just get their prelims on instead of the meaningless January basketball game? And Not For Nothing, if Tom Brady shows up to the UFC, you should have that guy walking down to the cage with Conor McGregor. You got the GOAT in the building. Well, at least he give him whatever he wants. I mean, let him put a. Honestly, Jorge Masvidal should have shown him respect and walked that belt over to Tom Brady and put it around him.
That's pretty awesome. I did have one more though that like we said, John wanted me to read these. However, and you kind of touched on the Maycee Barber thing, but I think this is a really good point. Let's really, not for nothing, but let's really not take Robbie from Barstool too serious. Also, in that video, he looked like a little girl. I get it, man. There are going to be people angry about him being on press row and blah, blah, blah. But, dude, he looked like a little child. I get it, dude. You have a shtick. But at least a guy, a friend of the program, the Schmo, at least he sticks to his shtick and, looks like a man while he does it. If you go to the circus and the clown squirts you in the eye with the flower, that's on you, buddy. You have to expect clowns to do that shit. And not to mention the fact that Robbie from Barstool is just what he is. He's a freaking clown, man. That's all there is to it.
All right.
All right.
Not a fan of him. All right.
No, well, I mean, I don't think a lot of people are, but at the end of the day, he's going to be around as long as Conor McGregor is. It's Barstool. What do you expect? Cut list. Who do you think should get their walking papers, if anybody, from this card?
I only got one. I cut Justin Ledet.
I'm with you. That's the only one I had. And shocker of the night. What do you think?
I wore Drew Dober's knockout.
Me too. I don't know. I think this is going to kind of be like, eye rolling, but like, I didn't expect Conor to dispose of Cowboy as quickly as he did. Like, I expected him to win early, but I don't think like 40 seconds in. I thought 40 seconds in was kind of surprising.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, and the way he did with shoulder strikes and stuff, yeah, of course.
All right, man, this is where we talk about the outside the cage production stuff. First of all, give me a grade on the celebrities that were there, man. I mean, there was a lot of notable faces, even so much so to the point that Myles Garrett gets shown, and I had to take one on the chest with Baker not getting mentioned.
Listen, when Jorge Masvidal, there was, when he headlined the UFC with Nate Diaz, they raised the celebrities to all-time level with The Rock, who goes to a lot more UFCs than people talk about, but also having the sitting president of the United States, Donald Trump. The celebrities were all-time high. I didn't think it could be topped, but you get Tom Brady in there, it is topped. The only man that can outdo the president, Tom Brady himself. A+.
Oh, my God. I can't believe you said he would outdo the president himself. You of all people.
If Tom Brady ran for president, I'd vote for Tom. I'm not a political person, but I'd vote for Tom Brady over anybody.
Oh, man. Well, to each his own. Joe Rogan said of Sadiq Yusuff when he was throwing bombs late, he said, Yusuff just isn't looking for home runs. He's trying to break windows in the parking lot. I thought that was interesting. And let's also not forget Paul Felder talking to Dan Hooker after he talked about a weakness. That was classic shit. Are you listening, Dan Hooker? Don't think I'm not training, brother. I remember him saying that. Don't think I'm not training, brother. I'm here in Vegas all week. I'm excited for that fight.
I think Hooker's going to win. I think Hooker's going to win that fight.
I do too. I think Hooker's going to win too, but man, that's going to be an awesome fight. You touched on it earlier, man, but let's get a little bit deeper into it. The technique of the night, you would have to imagine, come from the shoulders of an Irishman.
Yeah, I mean, the way he said, not just the way he did it. So it's not just the shoulder. You have to look at what he's doing with his arms. So his left hand, he was pushing, basically, he was creating space between them, pushing Cerrone back. But the whole move is actually not the left hand where you can see. It's actually the right hand that's going in between the waist. And he's doing what's called a reverse palm, which you see a lot of times in wrestling when guys are pummeling. And you put it on the inside of the guy's leg so they can't step in and get in close. So he's using that, and he's using that, and then he uses that to jump up and hit the shoulder. He was leaving his feet to land the shoulders. The very fact that he did that was crazy.
And actually, I just got a notification on my phone a little bit while ago. I guess they asked Israel Adesanya about it, and he's praising Conor for it, calling the move gangster, and calling, it was some gangster shiz, at least from the mouth of the one unified middleweight champion of the world. I don't want to go this far outside of the box, but because I had a feeling that whether it were you, whether it were John, whether it were literally anybody sitting in the seat that you're sitting in right now, you had a feeling that the technique of the night was going to be the shoulders. I'm going to go outside the box and kind of praise someone that you praise a little bit, having cardio, even though he was in a losing effort. That hip toss from Tim Elliott was pretty freaking impressive. Especially against a guy.
Yeah, like three times too.
Yeah, man. Especially against a guy that is such a grappling savant like Askar Askarov is. But regardless, wasn't enough to get the win. All right, man. Booking the main and the co-main. We're almost out of here, and we thank you for listening. But let's go ahead and book for the co-main and main event. Obviously, let's start with Conor McGregor. That's going to be.
No, stop at the bottom. Make it excited. Stop from the bottom.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So we're going to start with Raquel Pennington.
I would go with the winner of. There's not a lot to pick from. I'd go with the winner of Landsberg and McMann.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Maybe the loser of Ladd and Pena. That could make sense too if I had to kind of come from an opposite stance. But I think that makes sense. What about for Holly? Bellator?
Fighting Jesse Mealy in Bellator. That's what I would hope for. But
Sinead Kavanaugh.
Honestly, if she's got to fight in the UFC, you have a problem with Holly Holm and Jermaine Duranami both being at the top. Like, have them fight each other. That was a controversial fight. I don't know. I have no interest in Holly Holm anymore.
Me neither. I'm with you. Cowboy.
So Cowboy, I have the opponent, but I also have the location. So Donald Cerrone should fight Anthony Pettis. Two guys, two big names, both struggling, and they should be on not the main event, but the co-main event of UFC Greensboro.
You had to come at me for that. I kind of thought about it. And hey, in all respect to Greensboro, North Carolina, I completely made that up on the spot last week of Between the Links. And maybe I did stick by my guns, maybe just out of a lack of a better option, at least per se. But hey, man, let's get UFC. Shout out to Greensboro. Let's go ahead and make that card happen. I got lit up, man, by you.
The people in Greensboro is probably like, why does Davison love us and why does Keith hate us?
Well, hey, the state of North Carolina is getting their own card this week. Not too far from Greensboro, Raleigh, but regardless. And then obviously the question everybody wants to know, my man, who, if you are sitting in the seat of greater authority, who are you bouncing off for Conor to fight next first?
So the fight that everybody wants is the fight I'm not going to say. It seems like, first of all, let's back up. Dana wants the Khabib take on the winner of Khabib Ferguson. I hate that idea. The fight it seems like everybody wants is him versus Masvidal. But I'm actually going, if I was in charge, I'd go the Nate Diaz fight. I would finish the trilogy with Nate Diaz there's a couple reasons. One, Conor's got to, he got to win. He looked great. You could finish up the trilogy. He's going to win that trilogy because Nate looks like a guy who's declining. And if you don't face Nate now, you might not have another chance. So he needs to win the trilogy. I think he would look better than ever against Nate based on how he looked, but also Nate's declining. And then that would help rise his stock even more, and it would stop any controversy. Some people still believe he lost that second fight against Nate. So I think the timing, I would have Nate, and he said it himself that he's not back yet. He's still a little rusty, which is kind of funny that he said that. And how about the fact that this is for John. John was saying, the last question he asked on All Angles, who does Conor McGregor call out on the mic? He called out one person he didn't say
Paul Felder.
What would have been the line on he would call Paul Felder out?
Plus 10,000.
Yeah, so we were wrong.
Yeah, man. And you've sat, hypothetically next to me on the panel table of Between the Links for a while. You should know by now that I've been screaming for this trilogy and for a long time now, and I think it's never made any more sense. I'm in the seat where I think Masvidal makes sense, but I'll go a little outside the box. Why don't we get him and Justin Gaethje in there, bro? Like, he and Justin Gaethje would be awesome, in my opinion. I think that there would be enough venom there. Gaethje at this point has built up at least a little bit of distaste for Conor to this point. I thought it was awesome when he came out tweeted last night, say my name. That's a dangerous, dangerous man. But I think if I had to make the calls, I think with now Usman, or at least according to Abraham Kawa, whichever you want to call it, Usman, at least the rumors are Usman's hurt again.
Yeah, so John just texted me in his pick. John is saying it is the time to do the Conor McGregor Joe Duffy rematch. He wants Joe Duffy. He says Conor versus Joe Duffy needs to happen. The people want it.
The people want it.
Say Joe Duffy. Hey, if Conor lost to Cerrone, that was probably his next opponent. I'm not even joking. I'm being serious.
Somewhere up there, man. Somewhere up there. All right, man. Last thing, what grade would you give this card? I'll just say it right off the bat. I'm giving it a C-. In terms of action, I thought it would have moved on real slow.
I'm giving it a B-. The only moment that that really stunk it up was the Holm Pennington fight. Everything else I thought was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, that's a wrap. But before we go, let's go ahead and talk about this great network, which is expanding every single day. We'd like to thank you for listening to this episode and episodes in the future. But be sure to also listen to all the content on the LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network. As we said, we're adding shows and contributors every single day. But that includes the Not Safe for Work podcast with Kyle Steele and Fred Kirby, the Between the Links, which includes myself and Mr. Shillan, hosted by the great Mike Heck, And, of course, don't forget Craig Allen. The Bellator recap show, which I'm excited to come from next week from Columbus, Ohio, where I'll be for helping celebrate my brother's birthday. But I will be ready to do that recap show with you next week. Following a pretty big card, I'll be doing that show with Keith Shillan next week. Early stoppage with Mr. John Franklin and Craig Allen. The breakdown show with Max Friedman and Marcel Dorff. MMA yesterday, Kyle Steele and Keith Shillan. And obviously the MMA takeover with Keith Shillan. And now Off the Cuff, hosted by Mike Catt. All right, that's it, y'all. I will see y'all next time. Thanks for listening. Peace.